Okay, let's get into your questions. First one is, hey, David, how will a vaccine before November 1st affect the election? Even how this is asked needs to be clarified because there is not going to be a vaccine before November 1st in the sense that anybody's really going to be getting it. The absolute best case scenario would be that a vaccine approval is announced sometime in October before the election. And presumably what that will mean is that it is an emergency use authorization from Trump's FDA. Whether we trust it or not is a different question. It is very unlikely that a full approval for a vaccine will come in October, although it's possible. But either way, the point of Donald Trump doing this, which I've predicted for months, that sometime during October, it will be, we got it, we got the vaccine. The point of this will be to associate himself with getting the vaccine, even if the vaccine is from another country. As we know, the UK is very far ahead on vaccines, and so are many other countries. And it is going to be a PR and optics play. Now, a lot of people are pointing to this letter that was sent out by the CDC last week, which I covered, which tells states, be ready to distribute a vaccine by the end of October or early November. And there are many who are interpreting that to mean that there might be hundreds of millions of doses actually being distributed on that date. And that is not actually the likely scenario. What the letter says is states should have their plan in place for how to distribute the vaccine by that time. It does not actually suggest that states will have millions of doses to distribute by that time. Now, in terms of let's play it out, Trump announces a vaccine and says, we did it. We're the first to do it. The FDA has determined that this vaccine is safe and we are issuing an emergency use authorization and will immediately start sending vaccines around. How much of an impact would that have? First of all, it would be a smaller impact than in previous elections. Why? Because more people than ever are expected to vote early and to vote absentee, meaning that even if you don't go and vote early in person, you will have mailed your absentee ballot already, meaning that something that happens on October 15th or 20th or 25th may well have less of an impact this time around than it would have in the past. The other thing is, I don't know that many people are going to fall for it. If you look at more of a qualitative analysis, like the one done by Alan Lichtman, for example, or some other election predictioneers, the cake gets baked earlier than the middle of October or November 1st or whatever the case may be. The only counter to that, and I do think it's a relevant counter, is that if the election is expected to be close from an electoral standpoint, even if Biden wins the popular vote by a few points, as he well may, you could still have an electoral victory for Donald Trump based on a few states. If Donald Trump's announcement of a vaccine emergency use authorization on October 25th, for example, shifts just 1% of the ballot of the vote in some states, it is conceivable mathematically that would shift the results from Joe Biden to Donald Trump. And so that's why we need to anticipate that this is going to happen, because I've been predicting it for months. We need to anticipate that the voter suppression that is likely to be done is not going to figure into the polls, that the voter purges, that the messing with the post office, none of this stuff is going to be in the polling numbers. And thus, we need to do everything we can to get out the vote, to understand that even in blue states, we need to run up the score. Even in red states that Biden will lose, we need to get as many votes for Biden as possible to have the most overwhelming possible popular vote victory in order to make it more difficult. That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to make it more difficult for a court, if it comes down to a court saying you can keep counting absentee ballots or you have to stop, that it makes the decision more difficult for them if the popular vote is overwhelming in favor of Joe Biden. I do predict that sometime between October 20th and November 1st, the White House is going to send Trump to some facility, maybe a pharmacy. Listen, this guy's depraved. I could imagine him going to a CVS and announcing, we are issuing an emergency use authorization for a coronavirus vaccine. There will be no such vaccine at that CVS. It will be a photo op. And I worry that it could actually convince 1 or 2% of the population in some states, and it would be very, very bad for Joe Biden. So let's be ready. One of our sponsors today is Hydrant, and they are giving my audience 25% off your first order. This has been a game changer for me. This is a refreshing electrolyte powder that you mix directly into your water to rehydrate your body because it is packed with the 4 essential electrolytes that your body needs the most. That's sodium, potassium, magnesium, and zinc. And because of how Hydrant is formulated, it's an efficient way of getting yourself rehydrated, and it tastes awesome. There's a variety of flavors. I have blood orange, which I love. You can also get grapefruit and lime. A lot of us don't even realize when we're dehydrated a lot of the time, and it's become a really great part of my daily routine. If I'm underhydrated, I'm affected physically, I'm affected mentally, and I think you never fully understand this until you use Hydrant for the first time. I get a great boost of energy when I'm properly hydrated if I've been dehydrated. They also have a version with caffeine, which I love if and when that's what I'm looking for. Everyone in my audience gets 25% off your first order when you go to drinkhydrant.com/Pakman, or just enter the code Pakman at checkout. I've put the link right underneath this video.